Bonsoir on South Africa tonight. Welcome back to ENCA. We speak in rugby this hour. Disappointment for the Stormers who went down 24-17 against Glasgow Warriors yesterday. The result was only the second loss that the South African franchise has registered in the URC to date. Coach John Dobson says the loopholes were a sign that the Stormers were caught off guard. Up next is the Champions Cup, and joining me to discuss this is our former Stormers player Robbie Kempson. Good afternoon, Mr. Kempson. Thank you for taking the time to speak to the sports viewers of ENCA. What did you make of the Stormers match at the weekend and their form in 2023 so far? Are you seeing glimpses of the champions' tenacity that they showed last season coming through?
Yeah, good evening, Arthur. And, yes, absolutely. I think what Gob has done exceptionally well is he's blended youth and experience. He's blended a lot of couple of the Springboks with a couple of the young guys that have coming through, and he's built quite a bit of depth in the squad. Yes, I think they are short in a few positions, as they probably found out last night. Towards the latter part of the game, their scrums really battled, and I think potentially that's where they lost the momentum. Defensively, I think they were found a little bit wanting, particularly out wide. I think Glasgow were exceptional. They do have an exceptionally good attacking backline, to make no mistake about that, and they exploited the outside spaces very well. So, no, I think from John Dobson's point of view, yes, they are bitterly disappointed. Not easy to play against a Glasgow side that's 6 wins now in all competitions over the last 6 weeks. So I don't think it needs to be too downhearted by the fact in that which they are. Glasgow are extremely happy, but the Stormers, there's so much room for improvement from this game that they played, and I think they found out where the small pitfalls were. A couple of defensive lapses, the breakdown, they were penalised quite harshly. Dean Fourie didn't really get away with a much there, so it's one that got away from them, and they still could have won it right at the end.
You did mention defensive errors. It cost the Stormers in Scotland, of course, but how do they fix these challenges going forward?
To be fair, they've had one of the best defensive outfits throughout this, particularly URC competition. So I don't think there's too much to be worried about. So I think, as soon as you start mixing and matching, which they've had to do, unfortunately, in the centre pairings over the last couple of weeks, and they haven't had a settled sort of run with the back five, it does become slightly difficult to get the excellent sort of worksheet that they've had with their defensive abilities. So I don't think there's too much for them to work on. They've really been at the forefront of the defensive stats throughout the comp so far. London Irish do pose a different type of threat, although they also do have quite an exciting backline and really do play attractive running rugby, which potentially might suit the Stormers if they're going into this game, which is almost a much kind of win away from home. But certainly, I don't think there's doom and gloom at all for the Stormers. I think they've just lost a game away from home in appalling conditions towards the end, by a very well orchestrated try. So I think they're still on the front foot. They've still got a lot of momentum on their side, and I think a lot of positive things can come out of this game and from the loss itself.
Robbie, it was a tough day in the office for Manie Libbok with the boot, missing 2 crucial spot kicks and only clearing 1 out of 4. Why is this the matter for someone who has come a long way in this competition?
No, I think also look at conditions. You're playing on an artificial surface, which the South African teams are not used to at this moment. We saw even the forwards changing their boots in the first half with regards to them slipping in the scrum. So it is a difficult surface kick with. The wind sort of gusts around at Scotstoun Stadium, and it's just below a couple of 5 degrees. So it is a difficult conditions to kicking. It's not making an error for Manie Libbok. I mean, he's an excellent player, but occasionally he's going to have one of those off days, and unfortunately this was one of them. But I certainly wouldn't blame his kicking abilities for them going down in this game. I think particularly defensive areas and the breakdown where Glasgow Warriors got a lot of momentum with very fast breakdowns and they had the ability to get the ball out wide very quickly and get around the rush defence. I think those were kind of the major areas. And then towards the latter part of the game, when they really started battling with regards to their set pieces, the driving maul and the scrums, those were kind of more the areas that I'd be worried about, and certainly Dobber would be more worried about.
Coach Dobson has a group of hard workers and talented players who have been consistent over the last year and a half. How important is it to keep everyone on the same page, especially in a new competition such as the URC?
To be honest, I don't think it's difficult. I think Dobbo is a tremendous tactician. That even aside, he manages to build a very unique team culture, which not many South African teams manage to get. He's excellent in doing that. So I don't think there's anything to worry about with regards to the Stormers. There's really a bond in that group that really takes them to different heights compared to most other sides. And I think this will galvanise them even more. They realise they have an opportunity. London Irish, unfortunately for them, also hit their straps by beating Saracens last week and having a good game this past weekend. But they really are a side that's galvanised together, and I don't see them, falling afoot of anything that might become a problem to them. I think it's just a matter of them upping the ante now that they're going back into Europe and ensuring that they get an all-important victory away from home.
How important is the Champions Cup for the Stormers? They beat London Irish last time out. They meet them this weekend again for the second time. How do you see the Stormers playing out against them?
No, I think much of the same. Irish would have watched this game against Glasgow and seen, where they perhaps were vulnerable. The good thing for the Stormers is that they can fix those vulnerabilities and the errors in which they had. So, from a very poor game, as coming from the coach's mouth, which they can obviously add on to going into the Irish game. I think it always will be tight. They're away from home. Second game of a tour. But, with regards to the manner in which the Stormers have gone about their abilities in all the games, and the URC, all the Champions Cup, I think, they're in good stead from a South African point of view. I think they're one of the better sides that can really has the ability to change, the course of games and the ability in the way they play games off the cuff. And I think it's testament to their coaching staff and how well they've done so far in all competitions.
Robbie, in closing, it is a Rugby World Cup here, and most players want to use a domestic front to kind of addition to wear the green and gold of the Springboks. Which players in the Stormers mix have stood out for you so far?
Yeah, listen, the obvious one becomes Kitshoff. I thought Paul de Vet was very good yesterday. He really had very snappy service. Diamani has been on everyone's lips and should be. He's been an outstanding player for them. Junior Pokamela is sort of there or thereabouts. But yeah, I think if you go back to the Mani Lebok, Damien Willemse is an outstanding player, as we all know. But certainly a guy like Diamani would stick out for everyone, as would a Deon Fourie. Even at his ripe age, is putting in performance after performance. So there are a couple there that aren't incumbent Springboks that are making a bit of noise, and hopefully the selectors have a look.
All right, thank you very much, Robbie Kempson, former Stormers player. Just on the Stormers campaign in the URC so far, losing out to Glasgow Warriors yesterday, and of course the Champions Cup fixture coming up this week on Sunday. Robbie Kempson, former Springbok as well, just speaking about the Rugby World Cup 2023, which is taking place in France later in the year.